What if Mark Carney's visit to India was not just a diplomatic courtesy? What if it was not simply about trade talks or bilateral relations? What if it represented something far more consequential? Because while Donald Trump has spent months threatening allies, imposing tariffs, and demanding loyalty, Mark Carney just received a hero's welcome in New Delhi. Not quiet diplomacy, not routine protocol, a hero's welcome. And the message that sends is unmistakable. The world is no longer waiting for Washington's approval. It is building around it. This is no longer about one meeting. This is about global realignment happening in real time. Mark Carney arrived in India this week for what was officially described as a state visit focused on trade, energy security, and strategic partnership. Within hours, the optics told a different story. Carney was received by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi with full ceremonial honors. He met with top cabinet ministers. He addressed India's most influential business leaders. He participated in bilateral discussions on clean energy, critical minerals, and defense cooperation. This was not a working-level visit. This was a statement. India does not offer this level of reception casually. It signals priority. It signals alignment. It signals that Canada, under Carney's leadership, is seen as a credible, stable, and strategically valuable partner. And that distinction matters because it reflects a choice to engage deeply with Ottawa while keeping Washington at arm's length. The timing is not coincidental. Just weeks ago, Donald Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on Indian steel and aluminum. He publicly criticized India's trade policies. He threatened further economic penalties if New Delhi did not comply. India's response was measured but firm. It did not escalate. It did not retaliate impulsively. Instead, it began diversifying its partnerships. It strengthened ties with the European Union. It deepened engagement with Japan and Australia. And now, it is rolling out a red carpet for Canada. This is strategic hedging, and it is a direct consequence of Trump's approach. When a major economy like India decides that stability matters more than proximity to Washington, that is not just a diplomatic shift. That is a structural recalibration of global influence. During Carney's visit, India and Canada announced preliminary agreements on rare earth minerals, a sector critical to electric vehicle production, renewable energy infrastructure, and advanced manufacturing. Canada has some of the world's largest reserves of lithium, cobalt, and nickel. India has massive demand and growing industrial capacity. The partnership makes economic sense. But it also makes geopolitical sense because it reduces dependence on China and bypasses the uncertainty that now surrounds U.S. trade policy. This is supply chain restructuring. And it is happening because countries no longer trust that the United States will remain a stable partner. Trump framed his tariffs as leverage. Instead, they became a catalyst for nations to build alternate systems. Canada is now positioned as a reliable supplier in a global market actively seeking alternatives to American unpredictability. The reception Carney received was not just warm, it was symbolic. Indian media outlets described him as a leader who represents stability, multilateralism, and respect for international norms. Business leaders praised his approach to trade as transparent and partnership-driven. Government officials highlighted Canada's commitment to rules-based cooperation. These are pointed contrasts. And the contrast being drawn is with Donald Trump. India is making this comparison publicly. And that shift is deliberate because India is signaling that there are alternatives to Washington's dominance. That message resonates in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America. Everywhere that Trump's tariff threats and erratic policy shifts have created uncertainty, Carney's disciplined engagement is offering an alternative model. This is about the architecture of global trade and influence. And right now, that architecture is being redrawn without the United States at the center. While Carney was being welcomed in New Delhi, Donald Trump was facing mounting criticism at home. Congressional leaders questioned his tariff strategy. Business groups warned of rising costs. Economic data showed slowing growth and weakening consumer confidence. Trump responded with defiance, insisting that his approach was working and that foreign countries would eventually surrender. But the evidence suggests otherwise. India did not surrender. It pivoted. Europe did not comply. It retaliated and diversified. Japan did not concede. It strengthened ties with Canada. The pattern is consistent. Trump issues threats. Countries adapt. And in adapting, they reduce their reliance on the United States. This is the paradox of Trump's strategy. He believed that America's economic size would force compliance. Instead, it accelerated the search for alternatives. He believed that threats would generate leverage. Instead, they generated resentment and strategic independence. He believed that countries had no choice but to accept American terms. Instead, they found partners who offered stability, predictability, and mutual respect. Mark Carney represents that alternative, and India's reception of him confirms it. What makes this moment particularly significant is that India is not a small economy. It is the world's fifth largest by GDP and one of the fastest-growing major markets. Its decisions carry weight. Its partnerships shape global trends. When India chooses to elevate Canada while distancing itself from the United States, that is not a minor adjustment. That is a realignment of strategic priorities. India's choice reflects a broader pattern among U.S. allies. Countries that once deferred to Washington are now pursuing independent strategies. They are building coalitions that do not include the United States. They are negotiating trade agreements that bypass American markets. This is not anti-American sentiment. This is risk management driven by the unpredictability of Trump's leadership. Mark Carney did not create this opportunity through aggression. He created it through patience. While Trump escalated, Carney stabilized. While Trump threatened, Carney negotiated. While Trump demanded loyalty, Carney offered partnership. The result is clear. Canada is gaining influence. The United States is losing it. Trump framed his presidency around making America respected again. But respect is not built on threats. It is built on reliability. And right now, the United States is seen as unreliable. Its trade policy shifts without warning. Its commitments are conditional. Its leadership is transactional. Countries do not partner with unreliable actors. They hedge against them. India's embrace of Mark Carney is that hedge in action. It is a public demonstration that there are credible alternatives to American partnership. And once that perception takes hold, it becomes self-reinforcing. Other countries see India's success in diversifying. They follow suit. Networks form. Trade flows shift. Influence migrates. The United States finds itself increasingly isolated not because it was abandoned, but because it made itself unreliable. This dynamic is uniquely damaging for Trump because it contradicts his core narrative. He promised to restore American dominance. Instead, he accelerated American irrelevance. He promised that countries would beg for access to U.S. markets. Instead, they are building systems that function without them. He promised that toughness would generate respect. Instead, it generated distance. Carney's reception in India exposes that failure. It shows that diplomacy still matters. That consistency still matters. That respect still matters. And that countries are willing to reward leaders who offer those things. Trump dismissed diplomacy as weakness. Carney proved it was strength. Trump treated allies as obstacles. Carney treated them as partners. And now the results are visible. The European Union is negotiating trade agreements with Canada that deliberately exclude the U.S. Japan is deepening defense cooperation with Ottawa. Australia is coordinating on critical minerals. These are coordinated responses to American unpredictability. Mark Carney is at the center of this shift, not because he sought confrontation, but because he offered an alternative. He did not need to attack Trump. He simply needed to be different. Stable where Trump was chaotic. Predictable where Trump was erratic. Collaborative where Trump was confrontational. That contrast did the work. Trump built his brand on the idea that only strength matters. But strength without strategy is just noise. And noise does not build alliances. It does not secure trade deals. It generates fatigue. And eventually, it generates abandonment. India's decision to embrace Carney is that abandonment made visible. It is a signal that the world has moved on. That waiting for American leadership is no longer viable. That other options exist and are being pursued. Trump wanted to make America indispensable. Instead, he made it optional. Mark Carney's visit to India was supposed to be routine diplomatic engagement. Instead, it became a demonstration of what post-Trump global leadership looks like. Collaborative, transparent, strategic, and effective. While Trump continues to threaten, Carney continues to build. While Trump loses allies, Carney gains partners. While Trump's influence contracts, Carney's expands. This is not a temporary shift. This is a structural change. And it is accelerating because countries have learned that they cannot rely on Washington. They need alternatives. And Canada, under Carney's leadership, is providing them. If you value serious political analysis that tracks real shifts in global power, subscribe to Canada Today. We do not chase headlines. We follow influence. We track alliances. We measure consequences. Because sometimes the most important story is not what a leader says. It is who the world chooses to listen to instead. And right now, the world is listening to Mark Carney. Donald Trump promised to restore American greatness. Instead, he created a vacuum. And Mark Carney is filling it. Not with threats. Not with tariffs. Not with chaos. With diplomacy. With consistency. With results. India's hero's welcome was not just a reception. It was a verdict. And the verdict is clear. The world has found an alternative to Trump. And it is working. Subscribe to Canada Today. We cut through rhetoric and focus on power. Thank you for watching.